Hello and welcome to the Daily Oz. On today's episode, we are talking with an expert about the impacts of climate change on the future of Aussie music festivals. It comes after a Victorian festival, Pitch, was cancelled halfway through on the weekend due to extreme fire danger. To talk us through what that means for the landscape of Australian live music, I'm joined by Green Music Australia CEO Berish Ballender. Berish, we're talking today about climate change. What can you tell us about how that's impacting festivals in Australia?
It's really sad to see, our beloved cultural events often occur around summer. We're seeing, extreme heat, sometimes floods, sometimes fires play havoc. Over 47 festivals have been partially or fully shut down since 2015 as a result of extreme weather. The writing was on the wall. Scientists have been warning us about this for decades, and we've been advocating for decades for this, for governments to really step up and do everything they can to minimise the damage so that we can continue to go and see festivals and outdoor live music events and enjoy them, which is a cherished part of our Australian society.
This might not be a factor that people immediately think of when they think about festival cancellations. We have seen on the other side of COVID a raft of reasons why live music has shifted, everything from staffing issues to ticket sale issues to international artists and the uncertainty of borders back in the peak of COVID. How would you say climate ranks on that scale of, reasons that impact festivals in a modern context? Do you think that people are aware enough or that there is enough attention on this issue?
Live music was massively hit by COVID. As we move forward, I would say more and more people are becoming increasingly familiar with the issues of climate change and how these extreme weather events are going to impact their event. Whether or not audiences are aware of it, behind the scenes, insurance premiums are already going up because there are more and more claims on, if you were to cancel an event last minute, you've spent millions and millions of dollars, and at times you're insured for that damage. And so if you're able to get the claim on it, the next time round, the insurance company's going to bump the premium, and they're not just going to bump it for that festival, but they're going to bump it for all of them.
In terms of sort of the real world implications of something like insurance premiums that you've described there, I think many of our listeners will be festival goers, but in terms of understanding the complexities of organising a festival and putting on a festival and all those other costs, how big of a burden is that extra climate cost on organisers in an already, as you say, kind of vulnerable market?
Look, I don't have exact figures on what proportion of their outgoings it is, but what I do know for sure is that it's going to increase. There is always an element of unknown when you're putting on these events, but the degree to which climate change is going to make floods, fires, extreme heat, and other extremes more prevalent it just means that, these events may well need to be shut down last minute, and you just cannot plan for it.
Can you tell me a bit about Green Music Australia? What are you guys pushing for? What do you really want to see change in this space?
Thanks for asking that. Look, our role as the peak body for Music and Environment Australia is to advocate for change primarily at government level. It's our governments that hold the economic levers. It's our governments that set regulatory environments and put laws into place. And they have a really important role in stopping fossil fuels from being mined, in basically turning off the tap when it comes to the stuff that's fueling climate change.
When I think back to, the start of my festival days, you're leaving the festival, there's hundreds of tents left behind, things like that, not to mention the waste, the food waste, the smell. I'm sure people viscerally know what I'm talking about. What's the impact of that? How can we improve that space?
That's something we're working on really closely with a lot of live music events, and we're finding really great strategies to lower the footprint. So, whether it is live music venues installing solar panels on their rooftops or opting for green power so that every gig played at that music venue from there on in is less carbon intensive, or whether it's bands finding ways to tour and create routes that are more sustainable and have green artist riders that demand no single-use plastics. In the case of festivals, we've worked really heavily on waste reduction efforts, but I think what we've got to realize is there's a limit to how far we can go as a sector without government intervention.
The catalyst for the conversation this week is, of course, Pitch Festival closing because of the extreme heat and fire danger in Victoria. When it comes to that kind of immediate threat, do festival organisers need to rethink their approach when it comes to, physical spaces, evacuation plans, how they're responding to those situations, even the scheduling of events?
We've seen Falls Festival, their launch site move because of the prohibitive fire danger associated with that site. And I think it's very likely that we'll see more and more events have to make really tough decisions, whether it is locations that are more central and less regional, which, is really sad because festivals are a boon to a regional economy. I think we got to really fight to keep these festivals alive in these places, and they might have to change the dates that they operate in.
Do you think that, if there could be a silver lining here, that there's an opportunity perhaps to rethink the relationship that Australians have with festivals? The summer festival slate has always been a big part of the live music culture in Australia. Should there maybe be more of a discussion about the opportunities of moving away from a summer festival sort of routine?
That's such a good question. And honestly, I think there's always opportunities in a crisis. When you're faced with these kind of challenges, there may well be promoters or others that go, wonderful, let's step into a different space, whether it is a different time of year or a different location. But I really want to keep people's focused on the critical thing, which is keeping global warming below a certain amount.
Have you seen, in your work with Green Music Australia, do you look to how festivals overseas are doing things? Are there any lessons that Australian festivals can take from how sustainability or natural disasters are being managed around the world?
I really think the climate adaptation space, so managing extreme weather, is in its infancy. And it's in a conversation we're really keen to help along and talk with all the key stakeholders about it. It's a role that we see is needed, but I can't think of a clear example of overseas practices that surpasses what's happening here in Australia because of the level of unpredictability. There are some really great examples overseas. There's also some wonderful festivals, although I must admit, some here at home, groups like Strawberry Fields that completely switched to 100% reusable crockery, not just the cups, but the crockery as well. I think that's world leading.
Final question before I let you go. I think as punters, it can feel quite helpless. First of all, wanting to buy tickets to something, but feeling unsure about whether or not it's going to go ahead versus, actually getting there, having your boots on the ground and not knowing if you can help in any way. What would your advice be to festival goers, particularly given the uncharted territory that we're finding ourselves in?
I empathise so much. It'd be horrible to have planned your entire weekend or holidays around some really exciting, important moment, and you're going with all your mates. You spent however long planning it, and then you've got to can it in the last minute, or you even get to site and then have to leave. And look, extreme weather is difficult for anyone. Talk to people that have survived bushfires. It comes in a very unexpected way, and all of a sudden you're fighting for your life, or you're fighting to keep your property from burning down. That is the magnitude of what we're dealing with here. The fact is, we need this to be addressed at a systemic level. And there are so many music lovers in Australia. There are potentially, I've seen figures that show that potentially there's more music lovers than sports lovers. And, even if it's similar in numbers, what we're talking about is, more than half of the Australian population. And if these people want their beloved festivals to keep happening, they've got a voice and they can, get angry.
Barish, thank you so much. That was really fascinating.
Oh, absolute pleasure. Always happy to talk about it.